Imagine a world where generosity, collaboration, and caring are the norm. A world that's within your reach. I'm Gail West, and this is Reality Reimagined, where we break boundaries, elevate your spirit, and turn your world into something extraordinary. As the best-selling author of Money Come Dance With Me and your guide on this incredible journey, I'm here to challenge the ordinary and introduce you to the extraordinary. We stand at the edge of one of the most thrilling evolutionary leaps in human history, from unraveling ancient mysteries to diving into cutting-edge science, spirituality, and the emerging economies. This is your front row seat to the future. Together with visionaries from around the globe, we'll explore who are we and who are we becoming, and how can we reshape reality. Reality Reimagined begins now. Get ready to transform. Hi, this is Gail West, and you are on Reality Reimagined. I'm so excited to have you today. This is the last show of the year, and I have the amazing scientist Garret Yount on my show today, and he is a molecular neurobiologist, isn't that amazing? Whose work applies rigorous science to the study of consciousness. His research has been featured in various media, including Entangled Minds with Dean Radin, Extraordinary Knowing with Elizabeth Lloyd Mayer, and has been dramatized in The Lost Symbol with Dan Brown. Welcome, Garret. So happy to have you
Thanks.
on my show today.
Yeah.
So I kind of gave you the heads up before we started, and my two questions that I start everybody with: what brings you hope?
What brings me hope? Well, right now we just had the first ever, I think, tornado warning in I live in San Francisco, and we had it book up to a tornado warning and tsunami alert. There's those super high winds and crazy weather. All the humans running around, freaking out. And what gives me hope is the flowers in my little garden, my little urban garden, my backyard. These little tiny flowers, they're called impatiens. They're so delicate.
Oh, I love those flowers. They're
And
so beautiful.
just so bursting with life and so happy. The wind that whatever they've got going on, they were completely unfazed.
Wow.
And they were just so bright and happy. And they gave me hope.
Oh, cool. And the other question, since this is Reality Reimagined, is what is your new reality that you imagine for the world?
Hmm. New reality, I imagine when the illusion of separateness between people thins
Mm,
out and fades away, when we actually understand our interconnectedness with each other and all of all of reality, all of the plans with the little impatience and everything, and we kind of go into that new state of consciousness where we're all the connectedness is evident.
yeah. So I'm excited about the work you did. And he wrote the book. I'm holding it up for those of you who are on YouTube, Why Vibes Matter. That's the title of this show, Understanding Your Energy and Learning How to Use It Wisely. So a lot of people talked about vibes, but what the hell are vibes? And I want to start with this quote that you have in the book from Max Planck. Where is it? Just had it. Um, and Max Planck was a Nobel Prize winner, credited with the birth of quantum physics. And he famously said, all the physical matters are composed of vibration. That
Mhm.
is really powerful. Tell
Yeah.
us what that means.
Yeah. So that's we're starting out on the physics level. And what that means, it's actually very literal. So what we understand now about our physical world or our body, the cells in our body, every cell you get to down smaller, get to the atom. And everybody remembers from school the model of the atom with the nucleus and the electrons spinning around it, orbiting around it. because that's the way that it's depicted to us is really not to scale at all. There's such a vast amount of space between the nucleus and the subatomic particles like electrons and quarks, just enormous amount of space. Actually, so if you took the actual nucleus and all these pieces and you squish them together, our body could be reduced to the size of a speck of dust. That's so we're almost all empty space. And those particles, those subatomic particles, are actually conceived of as vibrating energy. So we can't, there's so many different subdivisions of physics, but all of them consider subatomic particles as vibrating energy. So that the vibration of them, different levels and different frequencies of vibration, and that's what gives the illusion of solidness. So, we feel like our body is solid, the table or the laptop is solid, and we feel like we push down and we can touch it because we're putting solid against solid, but it's actually not solid at all. It's the each of the atoms in those surfaces are vibrating, and it's just those vibrating fields coming against each other and repelling. So, that's the tiny little wee microscopic view of it. But that's what Max Planck was talking about, is that it's all built out of vibration. So that's kind of the physics side of it. Of course, as you mentioned, vibes is used in so many different ways. So, we can talk about a bunch of different ways of what vibes are, but that's kind of the physics way of looking at
Well, I'm curious how you got into studying this. You've been
it.
you're with the Institute of Noetic Sciences. I love, love, love your work. And like, how long have you been with them?
I first I let's see, it's about 30 years ago I went to them and said, "Hey, I'm a molecular neurobiologist and I want to study consciousness." And the then president said, "Well, keep your day job at UCSF because we don't have that capacity right now." IONS, the Institute of Noetic Sciences, they're nickname IONS. They're now 50 years old. So in the past couple of decades, they've expanded the science program. So early on, I just collaborated with them. I had a lab in San Francisco. I've done one really cool experiment with Dean Radin while he was at IONS. I'd take cancer cells in a beer cooler up to the institute and do experiments. So I've been in cahoots with them for 30 years or more. And now I've been on staff for full time for about 8 years.
Mhm.
When I turned 50, I just like, okay, I'm just gonna go all in on the good stuff. And
Well, how did you get into the study? I'm really, what is a neurobiologist? And
yeah,
how did you get into studying consciousness? So what, like,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, neurobiologists, studying the nervous system and the brain. I'm actually a molecular neurobiologist, which is another little specialty looking at genes that are related to the nervous system.
Hmm.
And I actually did that PhD because of my interest in neurobiology. I'm sorry, in consciousness, thinking,
Hmm.
oh, here's one of the sciences where I can really look into consciousness. That was a little bit naive, because the mainstream neurobiology programs, especially back then, again, 30 years ago, were not really, consciousness was kind of a bad word. I realized I couldn't really say that much if I was going to finish my degree. But what got me interested
A lot
was,
of don't still don't believe in consciousness.
yeah, yeah. Well, like I say, yeah, being at the Institute of Noetic Sciences, it does come with challenges. Some people, just think this is you can how can you study that stuff? It can't be real. So we have some kind of double standards to contend with.
Well,
Um,
what exactly? I have an idea of what consciousness is. So describe for our audience what is your definition of consciousness? I think it goes really with this idea of vibration and how everything is vibrating and everything has a consciousness, supposedly. Um, and I was reading in your book about your work with brain cancer cells,
yeah,
which was really interesting. So what is your definition of consciousness?
yeah. It's a tough word. Again, just like vibes, it's used in so many different ways. let's start by talking about kind of two kinds of consciousness. There's the little c consciousness and the big C consciousness.
Mm-hmm.
The little consciousness, and both of those have multiple definitions as well. But the little c consciousness is really talking about kind of the biological experience of consciousness. So, what anesthesia can do when someone is put under for an operation is to make them unconscious, right? So that's turning off their parts of their brain that enable this sense of self and awareness of what's going on around you in your body. That's like the little c consciousness. And the big C consciousness is when you get into the kind of things you mentioned about rocks and plants having consciousness and the vibrations of the universe. And that's great. That's kind of like the when we talk a bit about in the book, I talk about the three levels of mind. It's kind of like super conscious mind, where that's where everything's connected.
Mm-hmm.
So I think you've got to just kind of distinguish between those two different uses, and they're of course valid to speak about it in both ways. It's just a matter of what's the context.
So let's talk about the three levels of the mind, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
So let's talk about that, and then how does that connect into our connection to ourselves and our connection to others.
yeah. So the reason I presented that very rudimentary model of mind with three levels, it was in order to talk about vibes because they're kind
Mhm.
of different kinds of vibes associated with each level of mind.
Right, right.
Subconscious mind, conscious mind, and the superconscious mind. So the the subconscious mind is something that of course going on without us being aware of it. But it's always active, and I believe it's there to protect us. That's kind of its job, and it interacts with the conscious mind to some degree. And that's what's kind of some of the fun stories that I dug up to write the book about how we don't even realize it, but sometimes the subconscious mind is driving us to do things. And then our conscious mind just kind of makes up a story so that we're appeased. We don't even know why we're doing this, but this
Mhm.
conscious mind would just be kind of making excuses for it. And then the superconscious mind is these where we're all interconnected. Some religious type language would be, the God mind or the all in one, and that's I believe where we can access things. For example, spiritual healing and spiritual states, transcendent states, altered states of consciousness. I think that taps into the superconscious mind, and that's I believe where these what I talk about superconscious vibes mediating things like spiritual healing.
Mhm. Well, you've done a lot of research with the mind and then the ab the ability of the mind to create, right? And there's a lot of research now about how we are all connected.
Yeah.
So in the idea of the mirror neurons, which are quite fascinating.
Yeah, yeah,
So let's go a little bit into that and your research, which I think is really powerful with
yeah,
who we are and what our energy is and personal vibes and connecting vibes and all the other
yeah.
stuff that goes with it.
There's a lot there.
It's
Yeah, I think it's fun to look at instances that we experience of vibes and connectedness that have different levels of explanation. So, sometimes it's tempting to think of some kind of connections as they're esoteric or involving the superconscious mind, when, as I was mentioning before, they're really just subconscious signals that are being picked up that we're not aware of, and then we kind of make excuses. And then there are others cases where I believe they are actual cases where the interconnectedness is being revealed.
Mhm.
Trying to think of some examples like the smell, but not even the smell. So there are chemicals that are emitted from these experiments were done with women watching sad movies, collecting tears. And so the tears have a chemical that you can't smell, but it does go into the air, and uh, our noses can pick it up. So this is a subconscious signal. So this is not my research. This is very, very cool research done showing that, blinded experiments put little cotton pad under men's noses, some with the women's tears, some with the saline as a mock. And it actually reduced the men's sexual drive. They were less attracted to women. So this is like the first level of it. And again, this is completely subconscious and not esoteric in any way. This is just a chemical thing that our body does. Um, they went on to look at actually testosterone was decreased, very significant physiological responses to these signals. So this is the neurobiology side of me coming out. This is just like
Wow.
going on. We don't know what's going on, and we make up stories about it. Um, then, kind of on the other end of the spectrum are the experiments we're doing with telepathy, which really we design them to actually block out any possibility of smell or any normal senses, right? We've got people in two separate rooms. The study we're doing right now is looking at gut telepathy. So we have electrodes on the belly of a receiver in one room, just measuring the reaction, the activity of it's the enteric nervous system, which is, basically your gut. And then we have a partner. Some people come in that are bonded pairs trying to send emotions from the distance. And we're just skipping over the mind. We're going right to the gut. The
Wow.
idea behind this is, there's this lore about gut feelings or following your gut.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And Dean Radin, actually in 2005, along with Marilyn Schlitz, previous president of IONS, they did this study in 2005, a pilot study, and their idea was maybe the gut's going to be more reliable about picking up telepathic signals because it doesn't have the monkey mind trying to think about, oh, is this right or should I think this? It might be more reliable. So they got really good results. So we're actually redoing that right now in the lab in Novato. If anybody is nearby, wants to come and be part of the experiment, hit us up. It's really fun. You got to come in with a partner. And this is an instance where we're seeing communication that can't be explained by any physics that we know. And so I think that's where we get into this super conscious vibes level. It's really fun stuff.
Wow. So when we talk about that's so cool. So the results so far have been what?
Well, the results of the pilot study were great, right? That's why then we got money to expand the study.
Uh-huh.
And what they found is that the strongest signal came when the sender, so the partner that's in the other room that's being shown images randomly that elicit emotion, when they were shown sad pictures, when they felt sad and they were trying to send sad feelings, that gave the biggest reaction in the gut of their partner in the other room. So
Wow.
the study had looked at multiple different, like happy, sad, angry, and because pilot studies generally are designed that way. You do a bunch of things to see what might work, and then when you see what's kind of looks like it's working, then we set up a formal study to test it in a very formal way, where it was designed to have enough power for statistics. So we're right in the middle of that. We don't know what the results are going to be, but I'm hoping that they corroborate what we found in the pilot study.
Well, what did you find? Did their chemicals released in the gut, or what was happening in the gut as far as or the body?
Yeah, the only thing that we were measuring then, so you know how the famous EEG
Right, right, right.
caps measuring the electrical activity of the brain. So this is just taking those same electrodes and just putting them on the belly. So it's measuring the activity of the enteric nervous system
Yeah,
instead of central nervous system. And so it's just electrical activity. It's a very crude measure, but it just shows the kind of the reactivity to
that the
that.
body reacted.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the body's getting this feeling, and
Wow. Wow.
and the mind or the brain may or may not
Hmm.
even register that.
Right. So part of what we're saying is that we pick up stuff whether we know it or not.
Yeah, we pick up
And
stuff whether we know
yeah,
or not. Sometimes there's really mundane
yeah.
explanations for it, and then sometimes I believe there are kind of these very cool esoteric reasons for it, and that's kind of the focus of ions, trying to get some science to back up those instances.
Well, it's fascinating when we think about stuff in the field. Like yesterday, I was feeling like kind of anxious and angry, and I had a Zoom meeting with people with a bunch of people, and everybody was feeling the same thing. I'm
Mm.
like, I was wondering what was happening in the field that people were picking stuff up. I'm like, people are going, yeah, I'm feeling really anxious. I'm like, well, I'm not, it's not just me. And so, and are, is it you guys aren't measuring stuff in the earth? Is that I think Heart Math is measuring
Yeah, heart math.
activity
And they've
activity in
also,
the earth.
yeah, and just relevant to what you were just mentioning, heart math has done these great studies of the electromagnetic field that is generated by the body, mainly by the heart. It's the biggest generator of EMF. And that can actually have energetic signature in it when we overlap with another person's field. It's like a big donut that goes out about 3 feet from your body. If you come into contact overlapping, heart math has shown evidence that that can actually transfer. So for when you're up close with people, your vibes could literally influence other people's vibes. So you could have that type of shared feeling. Now,
Hmm.
a Zoom call where people are far away, again, HeartMath hasn't looked at this. This is more of the distant, non-local impact types of experiments that Dean Radin has done some of, and that's that's the super vibe area.
The super vibe area. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go more into this. I'm remembering that I think they have huge electrodes in certain parts of the Earth, and that when Obama was elected and did his inaugural speech, that there was a huge spike
Mm,
that was felt around the Earth, which is really interesting because people are watching it. I was watching it in China at the time.
yeah,
People are watching it all over the planet, all over the planet.
yeah.
So that's fascinating. Okay, we're going to come back and we're going to go more into vibes and how you can measure your vibes or not necessarily, how you can control your vibes, just feel your vibes and what are vibes. And we'll be back in a flash. Hello, we're back. This is Gail West. You are on Reality Reimagined, and I have my guest. I'm so excited. We've been talking about vibes. Garret Yount, who's the author of Why Vibes Matter, and talk about really cool stuff. Anyway, on the break, we were talking about what are personal vibes and how you can kind of sense your personal vibes, right? You
Yeah.
said you had this really cool thing that people can do.
I've got a great self-test. I learned this from a Qigong master in China, um, as a way to kind of gauge for yourself how you're doing on raising your vibes. And so this is a method to test yourself. So what you do to raise your vibes, we can just talk about briefly. All the usual suspects, meditation, the most famous, right? To calm the mind, raise the vibrations, slow breathing, just so you basically do the practice that works best for you. But then to demonstrate to yourself that you're able to impact the vibes in your body. And you can think, the way it was taught to me was this demonstrates the Chinese principle of Yi Dao Qi Dao, is where the mind goes, the qi follows. So qi, I think of qi as the vibrations, the vibes in your body, your
Mhm.
energy. So here's the test. It's called the hot hand test. It's good to do it with a partner, or you can, if you can do it by yourself. But the first thing you do is before you do your meditation or whatever practice, you line up your palms like this, and you check out the tips of your fingers are aligned, right? They're perfectly aligned. And then this is the part where you can have a partner just draw a line across the pads of your thumb, right below your thumb. And if you're
Mhm.
by yourself, you can just put a pen in your mouth and mark it right across there. This is so that then after the meditation, you can put your hands together and line up your palms the same way. So once
Okay.
you make that little line, then put your hands down, relax. Say you're going to do a meditation. You do a very short meditation. I can tell you my favorite one later if you like, but very, very brief. Do meditation for a minute or so, just until you feel like you've been able to quiet your mind and maybe even feel the elevation of your vibes. We can talk about that later as well. But then the test is you stop. Then you put your hands back together with the lines connected, and then you look at the top. And if oh, sorry, I forgot the hot hand part. The hot hand part is after you meditate, then you imagine one hand starting to get super hot. You just, whatever visualization you can imagine, it's lava, it's red hot, it's on fire, and feel it. Just like send all the heat down there, literally 30 seconds. And then you put your hands back together with the little line. When you look at the tips, this one will be taller because you've expanded your hand. Your hand has expanded through microcirculation. So if it's not taller, just put him back down, do another minute meditation and try it again until you can do it. So I love this because
Seriously?
it works. It works. I've done it. So many people.
Oh, oh my God.
And
Uh,
you can be like practical, like, oh, do I like this meditation or like this other meditation? You can compare them. Which one allows you to do the hot hand test easier, faster, better?
wow. So how does so basically you've expanded the molecules in your hands so your hands got taller because it's
Yeah,
vibrating at a higher vibration?
not
Is that what
molecule.
happened?
It's like the physicalness of it in anatomy would be the microvesicles. So the tiny, once you're, the little vessels that are delivering blood to all the tissues, they go down to very, very little, tiny little tubes, and those respond to your mind. And this is amazing on the level we're talking about in terms of being able to gauge the level of your ability to raise your vibes. On a mundane level, I believe it really is one of the mechanisms why qigong, for example, can be so healing for so many different types of diseases, because poor microcirculation in any organ can lead to disease. It's essential for healthy organs and healthy tissue and repair. So I think that many of the meditation practices for health, one of the mechanisms for them working is by increasing microcirculation throughout the body.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
So, people talk about meditation, meditation, meditation. I meditate.
yeah,
Um, and then other people complain they can't quiet the mind.
yeah.
Why do you think meditation is so profound and powerful
Mm.
from a scientific point of view?
I think it is because it when to the extent that is effective in quieting the mind, this has a profound impact on our physical existence, because the current human is running around in a chronic state of anxiety because of an imbalance in the autonomic nervous system, because the basically the mind is in this low level chronically chronically in this fight or flight state, and it's not sustainable in our form. It's not good for us. It's meant to be a short acting. It's meant to be the sympathetic. There's two. One aspect of the autonomic nervous system, the sympathetic branch, is supposed to alert us, get us ready to fight or fly or flee. And this is meant to be a short acting activity to get us into safety. And then it gets balanced out by the parasympathetic, which does repair and digestion. And unfortunately, what's going on, the way that our minds have evolved in current society, is where we view things in the future as a threat now. We're ruminating and fretting about stuff that's happened in the past, and that's stressing us out. And our our body doesn't know the difference. And so that's one of the main reasons why meditation is so profoundly good, is
Mhm.
because it allows us to come back into balance, and the repercussions of that are very real in terms of physiological impact on our body. Um, Not to mention then just the mind space of things, being able to again, this conscious mind. super useful. We need it to be able to navigate and interact in certain ways, but we don't need it all the time.
Yeah.
We don't need it to be active all the time. We need to
Yeah.
achieve something, and then we need to give it a rest. And meditation, I think, brings that into focus. I want to mention one thing about some people think it's hard to quiet the mind. I'm one of those. And that's why I like meditations that kind of give my mind something to do to distract it. It's like throw a dog a bone so that it's kind of engaged, and then it's not just running around free. And so, it's detailed in the book, but this dumping buckets meditation that I learned again from this Chinese Qigong master, where you imagine pouring a bucket of water and you feel the water going down your body. It gives your mind something to do to feel that, focus on that tingling feeling. And I feel like it's an interface between your energetic body. And it's for me, it's one of the ways to get around this. It's easier for me to quiet my mind when I've got something to imagine that kind of sinks my thinking into it and it quiets it that way, as opposed to just trying to let it be quiet, just keeps coming back. But if
Well,
I've got
it's supposed to work. That's his job. So you're giving it something to do, basically, instead of thinking about the past or the future. It's getting something that you're doing now.
yeah, it's kind of activated in that way, and it kind
Yeah.
of but it's not causing any trouble anymore.
No, 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 no. It's just trying to be in the moment. So describe that a little bit more. I love the idea. I love water. So the idea of the dumping bucket. So you're imagining.
But is first you imagine what source of water you're going to use for this meditation, and you can get it from anywhere you want. It's all in your imagination, like a pond at my mother's farm or the ocean. And you get a bucket in your mind and you pour it. And in the very beginning, you can just have a drop. Just feel it go down first down the front of your body, then down the back, and then down the side. So it's three buckets for one set. And
Hmm.
literally just pour it, you feel it. And in the beginning, also can use your finger just to get yourself feeling that tingle.
Hmm.
Down, just feel it all the way. And then you get splits and goes down the front of your legs. And then off the tip of your toes down into the center of the earth and just let it sink down in there. And I always take a couple of breaths just right there with that sinking into the earth. And then pick up another bucket, pour it, and feel it go down the back. And then the more you do it, the more you can get that feeling right away. Then you can just let it be a whole sheet going down the front, the back, and the sides.
Yeah.
I
I'm
used to do
already
it every day.
relaxed just listening to you do it. I'm like, I'm there with you.
Yeah,
Wow, that's cool.
I love it. And when I learned that one of the principles is don't judge yourself, compare yourself to anybody else or yourself day to day. Just feel whatever you're feeling. If you feel it, that's what you're feeling right then, and it's real. And a lot of times, and again, this is a little bit on I don't know, the practical side of things. I really feel like when I'm doing this, like if it feels like, I want to let that sink in a little deeper there, like on my knee. Like I feel like I can pick up signals from my body, like that where something I'm doing is stressing it, or it's that I would have never paid attention to otherwise, and I would just keep plowing through, and then it would lead to some kind of injury.
Mhm.
It's kind of like a very simplistic preventative medicine aspect to it as well. And again, just connecting with your body where you wouldn't necessarily think about your body or appreciate your body all day long when you're running around controlled by your mind. Um, just another little variation on that because I do this every day, and so can do all kinds of variations. Sometimes I'll do different colors, go through the different colors. One, a set of three buckets, red, and then orange and yellow, and again, picking up different water from different locations to give a different feeling.
Mm.
Have fun with it. So that
Well,
works for me.
so what have you noticed as far as how long have you been doing this, the bucket thing?
I've been doing that. I've been doing that for about 30 years as well. Yeah, once I get onto this woo-woo world.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, p people call woo-woo, but I think that it's not woo-woo, it's science.
It's
There is,
certainly
and so when people call it woo, it feels like it's disrespecting what we know to be true, even though there's a lot of people out there that try to discount this. But if you think about it, we in the Western world are the only people that don't believe in stuff like this. You talk about qi to people in China, which I lived in China for a while. They totally are into it.
it's just
And
part
there
of
are yeah, and feng shui and the placement of things and when you eat stuff according and where you eat stuff according to the seasons, it totally makes sense. And then indigenous cultures, they're totally into this. But we in the Western world who think we are so smart, we're dying at a rapid pace. We have huge obesity issues. We have huge issues around anxiety, depression. Like we're not happy people.
yeah,
Just saying.
that's true. And I believe it's based in fear. I think there's fear of the actual power of ourselves, of our interconnectedness. I was introduced to this, I was introduced to this idea of the fear of psi. So psi meaning telepathy, these kind of extraordinary experiences that are referred to as woo-woo. Um, when I just come out to San Francisco, I joined the San Francisco Parapsychological Association, which was, met in Elizabeth Targ's house. It was just a small group of people. And I was so young. Everybody was like talking about fear of psi. And I was like, I have no fear of psi. I want to see auras. I I was a hippie. I had my wife try to do acupuncture on my third eye so I could see. I had no fear of
Hello,
psi.
California.
I don't know what you're talking about. And then I just want to relate the experience when I realized that subconsciously, even I do have fear of psi, despite being the poster child for, the hippie woo-woo type. We went to Cleve Baxter's lab. Cleve Baxter's famous guy. He's passed away now.
Yeah.
The circuit,
He did the experiments on plants, right?
yeah, yeah.
The
The book
first
is called
experiments on plants. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Plants is one of the books. He has a lab. His profession was a polygraph operator. He worked for the CIA doing lie detector tests. So this, electrical instrument that measures people's subconscious reactions. And he got famous because he hooked a plant up in his house to that and started to see that this plant was having reactions to things. So way back, there was a guy named Fred Sechet who um, he said, we're going to take this psychic down to Cleve Baxter's lab. And he asked me to bring my cells, these brain cancer cells. This is not in the book, I don't think. Um, we He wanted me to bring these cells down to see if the psychic could try to interact with the cells, and Cleve Baxter's gizmos would pick up the signals. And I was just the cell guy. And honestly, I carried them on the airplane and, completely illegal, I'm sure. Anyway, we got down to Cleve Baxter, old, sweet old guy, grandpa type. He was with me while I was getting the cells ready to put the electrodes in for the psychic to interact. Started asking me, oh, how did you get these cells? And I told him that they were immortalized cells that I had been growing from my PhD, and I feed them every 2 weeks and split them. And he goes, forget about the psychic. These cells think that you are their daddy because you've been feeding them for years. So you're going to be the one to try to interact with them. Completely unscripted, out of nowhere. So I was like, okay. So I did a little bit, very quick dumping buckets to settle my mind and just tried to reach out to the person that had donated the cells originally. I looked over. Those guys had their jaws on the floor. The machine had gone like an earthquake looks, splattering ink and everything. It was mind-boggling. And I saw it and I almost fainted. I had to sit down. I had a vasovagal response because the impact of literally interacted in that way. It was so overwhelming to me, even though I didn't think that I would be. But at some level,
Wow.
there was some fear, and I almost fainted. So I'll never forget that. And I'll
Wow.
never judge anybody for having fear of psi again.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I say this over and over and over again. We are more powerful than we know. We are more powerful than we know. If we knew how powerful we are as a group, we
Yeah,
could do so many things. And we always depend upon or have fear of the leaders who are going to change our lives or do these kinds of things. But if together we actually navigated our thoughts to create something different, it would happen.
I believe that's true. I
We're
really,
yeah, and we don't and we're afraid of it.
yeah,
We're more afraid of expansion than constriction.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
I guess that could have tied, that could be my view of a future, where yeah, it is kind of part of what I was saying is our understand our interconnectedness, and also then I would add understanding our power, the way you talk about.
And
So,
use it yet wisely.
yeah.
Okay, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go more into spaces and how you can raise your vibes. We've talked a little bit about meditation, about raising your vibes, about how we impact the world, and this amazing experiment of brain cells. And yeah, we'll be back in a flash. Hello, this is Gail West, and we are back. We've been talking with Garret Yount, who wrote the book Why Vibes Matter. We've been talking about vibes, we've been talking about meditation, we've been talking about amazing things. So, when we took a break, you were talking about a particular um, experiment you did with cancer cells, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
And the idea that so many of us are afraid of our power.
yeah.
So, if we talk about psi, do you believe that everybody has that capacity to connect
I do.
intuitively and
Yeah,
connect with each other?
yeah. I think it manifests in different ways with with every individual. Um, for example, you know, I feel, the strongest instances I felt personally were instances where I just see a different place and time. I could basically see through space and time. And that is sometimes called clairvoyance. Um, as opposed to telepathy, which is more like people can feel like they can hear other people's thoughts. Psychokinesis, being able to influence things. So I think that there's different aspects of these psychic abilities that are more just like all kinds of talents. Some people are better at one than the other. And
Hmm.
this is not my theory. This has been talked about through the esoteric traditions for years. I mean, for centuries.
Yeah.
Um, and it is something that we're really interested in studying with the scientific lens at IONS. There is an argument that it can be these are seen as distractions from spiritual growth. So they're referred to as the cities in one of the traditions where as you uh, elevate your consciousness, these abilities will show up. And if you're on a path, to enlightenment, there have been spoken about as kind of distractions. Don't get bogged down by that. Just keep going up. And I think there's probably something to that. Um, I don't really, I don't have the goal of being like enlightened by the time I die. Kind of want to have some fun while I'm here. And
Yeah.
I'm fascinated by this stuff. And that's actually what got me to this job where I am. I had, silly things happen when I was a kid where I just was like, I just saw through the house. I just saw something, how could that possibly be? Nobody around me is talking about the way this power of the mind.
Mhm.
So I just started reading a lot of the Eastern tradition books. And then that's why I went into neurobiology, thinking that I would be able to find um, research on that. But it really is outside of mainstream science research right now. So
Well, it's outside of mainstream science in the West. that's
Yes.
been around for centuries and centuries and centuries.
Yep.
And the idea that and honestly, the CIA used psychics in the 60s to
Absolutely.
do the same thing that the psi research, which was distance viewing to view what was happening in Russia, and because they knew that the Russians were doing the same thing, and then they tried to use that more and more for other things. And I know if you consider the idea that we're all connected, we have this connection that is all around us, that there are these energy patterns that are all around us. We affect our field, right?
Yeah.
Then it makes sense that we have the ability to connect
Yeah,
beyond time and space.
absolutely. And just to follow that up, those that has all been declassified. People can find that and read that. I believe they're called the Stargate files. That might be slightly off, but all that CIA research has been declassified. So you're entirely right to point that out, and your viewers could find that for themselves.
Well, I'd like to go more into spaces. We talked about feng shui. You talk about spaces in the book, along with how we connect to other people and how we affect the space that we're in. So, what is your sense of spaces, and
Yeah.
what is how that affects us?
So, the first thing I want to say about space is, mention feng shui. I like to to share, since I'm a scientist, kind of this is the perspective, that I'm bringing to it. And I think it's helpful to give a sense of some of the things that are talked about that have a scientific basis and some of them that don't. And hopefully it gives credibility to the ones that do, pointing out the ones that don't. So
Mhm.
my favorite example is the Himalayan salt lamps. So I'll say from the start, I've got one in the lab. I love it. I think that it does influence the vibes in the lab on a number of ways. Um, just the aesthetics of it, the colors, the the cool, soft glowing of it. However, if you look online and the way these things are marketed, it's if you just look online, you would believe that this ionizes the air, that it's going to clean the air and desanitize the air, and all these claims that absolutely don't make any sense at all. Because to ionize, it is true there can be ionizing going on, and if salt molecules were ionized, it would create negative ions and have a healthier, air quality. But those little tiny light bulbs inside of those big salt chunks don't generate even close to enough energy to do that. So I think it does a discredit to the actual value of
Mhm.
like that to be making these kinds of claims. So just a quick aside on that. And again, I love the lamps. Um, and and I think that the principles of feng shui, they're about managing the energy in a space. I think that there's a lot of you can feel the impact of that just
Mhm.
by sensing it. Um, the thing that I really like is the smudging, right? This idea of using the herbs to purify the kind of the vibes of a room. And you know, um, I want to just mention that white sage is the herb that I like to use for that most. There's some concern in some areas where it's being over harvested. You can grow it yourself in your garden. I've got 3 white sage plants in my garden, and it grows very easily, and you can use it to light. And there are very simple rituals for how to um, clean the energy of a room. And I think that, I don't know all the mechanisms of how that works. I imagine that the intent is a key element,
Mhm.
as well as kind of the kind of ritualistic and going through the ritual of doing it. Um, And it can be very simple. Generally you're going to do the four directions, and the recipe kind of has you make some little intentional statement that you just say over and over again, very simple, for what is your intention. And I believe that is has a real impact.
So I'm curious what you think about the power of intention, the power of our words,
Mm.
as far as the vibes that they create. So if we're thinking about you're talking about setting an intention, and
Mhm.
can one intention be more powerful than another intention? With the words that we say, a lot of people are not very kind to themselves. Does that affect our vibes? Does that affect when we walk into a room? And we talked about how emotions can
Yeah.
affect other people. So if you walk into a room where somebody's angry, we can feel it, right? And
Right.
did those energies stay in the room?
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. So I want to talk about words influencing your own energy, and then the energy staying in a room. So I'll come back to that, but the energy in a room, so kind of like the residual energy. Um, so I looked into this to try to find evidence for it for the book. I didn't find any really, really strong direct evidence. There's some great indirect evidence that is just as compelling, but I just want to be straightforward that I didn't find, there aren't instruments that are able to show, okay, this negative vibe has remained here.
Mhm.
But there's no doubt that it has an impact on people's psyche and behavior and culture, and it's been codified even in law. So, for example, there are some states in the United States where if there's been a murder in a home, the real estate agency, there's a certain period of time where they're compelled by law to reveal that. That's based on something, right? And then, so looking at people's reactions, there was an experiment where they just had people come in, they deceived them. They said, okay, we're going to fill out this questionnaire. Go to one of those rooms and fill it out. And the rooms just had a sign, some signage outside of it that you could tell you indicated, that gave the impression that just previously the meeting that had been in there before involved happy stuff. And then the sign on the other door indicated that there had been people, involving sad stuff. And people just go to the room where there was happy stuff going before because some deep belief that there's residual feeling, there's some vibes from the emotions or activity of people.
Mhm.
And there's no doubt that especially all this stuff comes out of the real estate agents, real estate industry. People are looking for a new home. The vibe they get is incredibly influential in what they ultimately decide. And so there are ways to try to manipulate that might, overcome, the smell of cookies, of course, is the famous one. Um, so we certainly respond to and react to the idea that there are residual vibes. And then there's stories of like Stonehenge, famous ritualistic places that over years and years, when people go there, they feel they can feel the vibes. I
Mhm.
want to say one thing about the sentences we say, aside from the this basic chant, supposed to be like the basic syllable, most fundamental syllable of the universe or something, and just doing that creates this calmness. But there was great research on gratitude. So saying words of gratitude, saying sentences of gratitude, um, has been a practice that's been well known for having a good attitude, raising your vibes. But they've actually shown like immune response increases, healthy physiological changes just from the act of having a habit of waking up in the morning and stating five things that you're grateful for. That not only, so you can talk about that raising your vibes, but there's also data showing that it has a physical impact positively on your health.
Mm.
So on the positive side of things.
Wow. We have a couple minutes left. So how can people get a hold of you? I want to share your book again. It's called Why Vibes Matter. You can find it on your local bookstore. You can find it on Amazon. And how can people get a hold of you?
Look
How
on,
can people find out about ions?
yeah. Just go to noetic.org. That's the website for the Institute of Noetic Sciences. And you'll find the scientists there. There's our papers. You can look at the experience and engagement department where they've got courses. Um, you can participate in research. There's a participate in research page. And again, I'll plug our gut telepathy experiment that's going on right now. You come with a partner, you each get $100 as a reward
And a
and
lunch.
free lunch. So you can't really beat that.
Yeah.
And it's a lot of fun too. So yeah, just the website. There's lots of fun stuff there.
And we have 1 minute left. What are your last thoughts?
Last thoughts, I would just say, the dumping buckets, whatever meditation you have, um, just try to treat yourself to that. It's hard to imagine, you can be so busy that you can't take 2 minutes of every day. And when I say I've done dumping buckets every day, for 30 years, it's true. But it's also true, it literally takes 2 minutes. It's not like, oh, I set up something special and sit down and light a candle. I just do whatever I'm doing, not while you're driving, but you can do it while you're walking, running, doing dishes, or standing in a nice meditative stance. But it's really no excuse not to just take a little time to quiet your mind, and the benefits are tremendous.
Quiet your mind for yourself, for others, and your body.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
your life. And your life.
You're going to make the world a better place.
Right. So this is Gail West, and I'm so happy to have you, Garret Yount, on my show. And right now we don't have any further shows to offer you for the next year. Not sure when it's going to happen again, but it's been great. Thank you so much. Love you, my audience, and come back again and raise your vibes because the world needs you. Thank you for tuning in to Reality Reimagined with me, your host, Gail West. Listen and watch live every second and fourth Thursday at 10 a.m. Pacific on transformationtalkradio.com, where you will have the opportunity to expand your mind, elevate your spirit, and transform your world into something truly awesome. Reality Reimagined is an exciting out-of-the-box look at what's new, what's old, and what's emerging, exploring the questions, who are we and who are we becoming? For more information on hope and transformation for a new reality, visit me, Gail West, at successwithsoul.com.